Hi, I'm Rachel from Jimmy Bean's Wool, and today I'm going to show you everything you need to know about block 12 of the Cascade Yarns Diagonal Afghan. Alright, so we've got block 12 here, and you can see that we have a lot going on. So there's some really beautiful patterning here. Bobbles on the sides over here, and you've got some cabling down the center. Small cables here, large cables here, and then these are twists that create this shape here, plus a couple other interesting stitches. So I'm going to bring this up a little closer so you can kind of see the detail on it, but these bobbles are really neat here. They add so much texture and like three-dimensionalness, I'm sure that's a word, to the square. So yeah, so I'm going to show you how to do all of these different techniques that you need to complete the square. So let me go ahead and get this out of the way. All right, so let's start with the bobbles first. And I already did one right here on my little swatch, so you can kind of see what it looks like when it's right there on the needles when you've just completed one. So it's a really simple version of a bobble that I hadn't seen before, and it was kind of neat. I like how it really comes off of the fabric. And it's very simple. You work the whole thing into one stitch, and you're going to knit one, but don't pull that stitch off the needle. Leave it on the left needle, and then bring your working yarn forward, and then purl into that same stitch. Again, don't pull that left stitch off the left needle. Leave it there. Put your working yarn back to the back of your work, knit, bring your working yarn forward, purl. You can see we've got 4 loops on the right needle now that are going into that same stitch. We need to do 3 more. So we're going to bring the working yarn back to the back again, knit one, back to the front again, purl one, and then one more knit. And you need to always end on a knit, so keep that in mind if you kind of have lost track. You're going to have 7 loops going into the same stitch, and you'll end with a knit. And you see I dropped that stitch off the left needle finally. And I can kind of show you the construction here. It's really neat when you start looking at it. This one giant loop here is all one stitch. You can see it connected to the one below it. And we've just really stretched it out by knitting into it 7 times basically. Okay, so now of course you don't want to increase 7 stitches, you need to get rid of those. And to do that, your first stitch on the right needle is your 7th stitch, and you're going to one by one pull each of those loops over the top of it, just like you would if you were binding off. So grab stitch 6 and pull it off, and then grab stitch 5 and pull it over the top of stitch 7 and drop it, and then do the same for 4 and drop, 3, drop, and you can see you're starting to build your bobble as you go. 2, whoops, I split my stitch a little bit, so keep an eye out for that. And then 1, whoops. It gets harder the more stitches you pull over the top. Okay, so you can see it kind of looks sort of loose and messy. So pull your working yarn to tighten it up a bit. And then go ahead and keep following the pattern for a couple stitches, and then come back to it. And you can kind of push it to the front of your work and kind of move it around a bit, and you'll see that it'll kind of fall into place and look really nice. All right, so that is how you do the bobble. Now there's another interesting stitch here that helps create some of those lines of texture that you see, and it is called the wrap 3. So let's do that one next. So with your yarn in the back of the work, which I already have there, you're going to slip 3 stitches to your right needle, and you always want to do this as if to purl because you don't want to twist those stitches. If you do it as if to knit, you'll twist them. So slip 1, 2, and 3. Now take your working yarn and bring it behind these stitches and then in between your needles and to the front. And then go ahead and slip these stitches back again. Again, be careful not to twist them. You're not trying to do twisted stitches here. And then once you do that, move your working yarn back to the back again, which wraps that yarn around those stitches. And then to finish the stitch, you're going to knit 2 together, like that, yarn over, and knit 1. And what that does is it puts a wrap around the 3 stitches that you just created the yarn over in, so it makes a nice, neat little, almost like a faux cable. So that is the wrap 3. All right, so the last thing I'm going to show you before we get into the cables and the twists that you also need to know for this square is how to do a purl 3 together. And if bear with me for just a second, I'm going to flip over to the wrong side of my work so that you can see what it would look like on the wrong side. All right. Okay, so purl 3 together. You're going to have your working yarn in the front, of course, and then you're gonna go into the next 3 stitches purlwise and purl them together, just as if you were doing a purl 2 together, but in this case it's a purl 3 together. And that's it, that's how you do it. All right, so just to recap real quick what I've shown you here, we've got our bobbles here. Here's 2 examples of it. And then this is your wrap 3, and then down here we've got a purl 3 together. All right, so now let's take a look at all of the cables and twists that you need to know for this pattern. So you're gonna wanna grab your cable needle for this section, and there's a lot of different twists and cables for this square, so I'm just gonna show you the paired ones that go together, and then you can kind of see how they're being used because they mirror each other. So let's start with the 2-stitch right cable and left cable. And I'm gonna just kind of knit into my swatch a couple stitches here. Okay, so for the 2-stitch right cable, you are gonna start by slipping 1 stitch to your cable needle and holding it to the back. So I'll go ahead and slip that 1 stitch over, hold it back, and then knit 1 stitch, and then knit 1 stitch from the cable needle. And that is your 2-stitch right cable. Now we'll do the 2-stitch left cable, and again you're going to slip 1 stitch to your cable needle and hold it to the front this time. Remember with slipping stitches, and this will be true for all of the cables and twists that we're doing, that you always want to slip them purlwise so that you don't twist them. So go ahead and slip that, hold it to the front, knit 1 from your left needle, and then knit 1 from the cable needle. All right, so let's see what that looks like here. You can see we've got this stitch just crossed over the one next to it, so that one kind of leans to the right. That's why that's the right cable. And then this left one here crosses over to the left, so that's your left cable. All right, so then let's get into the 3-stitch twists and cables. So the 3-stitch right purl twist and 3-stitch left purl twist will be the first one. And let me just kind of knit a couple stitches so that we can get away from our two-stitch cables. Okay, so we're going to slip 2 stitches to the cable needle and hold them to the back. 1, 2. Then you're going to knit 1 through the back loop. So you go into the back side of the stitch to do that. Knit through the back loop. And then you're going to purl 2 stitches off the cable needle. So purl 1, purl 2. Okay, I'm going to leave my working yarn in the front because we're actually going to purl the next stitch. The 3-stitch left purl twist is basically the mirror image of what we just did. So this time you're going to hold 1 stitch to the front, purl 2 stitches from your left needle, purl 1 and 2, and then come back to your cable needle, move your working yarn to the back, and knit through the back loop. All right, so there's your 3-stitch right purl and left purl twists, and you can kind of see what's going on here. We've got this 1 stitch that's twisted and also crossed over these 2 purl stitches to the right, and then the mirror image over here, this 1 twisted to the left. Okay, so the next one will be the 3-stitch right twist purl cable. Sorry, that's a bit of a mouthful there. We've got the right twist purl cable and the left twist purl cable that I'm going to show you now. So first you're going to slip 2 stitches to the cable needle and hold them to the back. So 1 and 2. And then come over to your left needle and you're going to knit 1 through the back loop. Whoops, don't slip it off like I did. Let me put that back over there. Okay. Knit through the back loop, and then from the cable needle you're going to purl 1 and knit 1. All right, so then the left twist purl cable, slip 1 to the cable needle and hold it to the front. And then you're going to knit 1 through the back loop. Whoops, twisted it a little bit there. These cables, when you get so many stitches that you're doing different things with, you gotta be careful not to have them too close to the end of your needle like I just did there. Okay, so knit 1 through the back loop, and then purl 1. And then yarn back to the back again and knit 1 through the back loop from the cable needle. Whoops, getting too close to the end of my needle there again. It's easy to do with cables for sure. Okay, so let me show you what we've done with this one here. You can see we've got a stitch leaning to the right there, and one leaning to the left right there. And then back behind it, you've got a purl stitch in between each knit for each of the cables. So you're kind of sandwiching a purl stitch in between your 2 knit ones through the back loop. So that's how you make those really nice, neat twisting stitches that are in that block. Okay, so now let's take a look at all of the 4-stitch cables and twists in this pattern. And I'm going to start by grabbing this guy here. Move that one out of the way. Okay, so there are several different versions of 4-stitch cables and twists. So I'm going to start by showing you just the basic 4-stitch right cable and 4-stitch left cable. Make sure and grab your cable needle, of course, for this part. And you're going to start by slipping 2 stitches to the cable needle and holding them to the back of your work. Knit 2 stitches. And then knit 2 stitches from your cable needle. It's a pretty basic 2/2 or 4-stitch cable. And that one's going to the right. So now let's do the 4-stitch left cable, and you're going to slip 2 stitches to the cable needle and hold them to the front, and then knit 2, and then knit 2 off of the cable. Okay, let me set that aside. I'll show you what we've just done there. You've got 2 stitches leaning to the right here, crossing over those 2 back there. And then you've got these 2 stitches here that are leaning to the left, crossing over those 2. So that's your right cable and your left cable using 4 stitches. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the 4-stitch right purl cable and the 4-stitch left purl cable. So for the right purl cable, you're going to slip 1 stitch to the cable needle and hold it to the back. And then you will knit 3, 1, 2, and 3, and then purl 1 from the cable needle. All right, so that's the right purl cable. And then for the left purl cable, you're going to slip 3 stitches to the cable needle, hold them to the front, and then you will purl 1, and then go back to your cable needle and knit 3. All right, so you can see here we've shifted 3 stitches to the right there, and then you've got your purl in the middle, and then purl here, and those 3 are shifted to the left. So that's your right purl cable and left purl cable over 4 stitches. Okay, so I'm going to set this guy aside and move on to a fresh swatch to do these last two. And you still need your cable needle for this one, but these are a little bit more complicated. So these are the 4-stitch twist wrap right cable and twist wrap left cable. And now if you remember, I showed you how to do a wrap 3. This is kind of building on that. You're going to wrap 3 stitches while also changing the position of where that wrap 3 is. So that's a little confusing, but let me show you what I mean. All right, so we'll start with the twist wrap right cable. You're going to slip 1 stitch to the cable needle and hold it to the back. And then with the yarn still at the back of your work, you're going to slip 3 stitches and make sure you don't twist them. And then take that working yarn that is still in the back, you haven't done anything with it yet, and you're going to wrap it around, come between your needles, and just leave it in the front of your work. You can almost just drop it while you're manipulating these stitches. And then come back up here and slip those 3 back to the left needle. And then pick up your working yarn again, and you're gonna wrap it across the front of those stitches and then towards the back. And when you come to the back, make sure you go in between both your left needle and your cable needle, because you need your yarn back here so that you can work that stitch off the cable needle eventually. Okay, so once you've got that wrapped and back in the back again, you're going to knit 2 together and then do a yarn over and then knit 1. And then finally come back to that little purl stitch or stitch that's been hanging out on your cable needle, and then you will purl it. All right, so it's a little hard to see. It'll become much clearer once you work the next row, but what you've done is you've wrapped your yarn around 3 stitches and then did that neat little knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 1 that's almost like a faux cable, but at the same time you also shifted it, the whole thing to the right with that purl, by moving that purl stitch to the other side of it, okay? All right, so now we're gonna do kind of the mirror stitch. I'm gonna just move over a couple stitches before we start it so it doesn't yank on my swatch too much. So start by slipping 3 stitches to your cable needle, 1, 2, 3, and hold them to the front. Bring your working yarn forward and go ahead and purl the next stitch. Okay, now we're going to be doing that knit 2 together, the wrap and then the knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 1 on the cable needle. So start by wrapping your working yarn around the cable needle to the left and come in front of your stitches. Okay, and then I think it's easiest to go ahead and slip these 3 off of the cable back onto the left needle to finish up this stitch. It'll be just a smidge easier for you. So go ahead and do that, and you can drop your cable needle. Your working yarn is over here on the other side of these 3 stitches. Pull it across the front of them, go in between your needles into the back of your work. And then complete the stitch by doing your knit 2 together, yarn over, and knit 1. All right, so you shifted the position again to the left by doing that purl one after you shifted those 3 stitches to the cable needle. So that moved that whole thing to the left, and it also did the pretty little faux cable with the wrapped stitch, the wrapped yarn around the 3 stitches. All right, so that was block 12. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and we'll see you back here in 2 weeks. I'm Rachel, thanks for watching. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you liked it, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing because we have a lot more yarn reviews, tutorials, and other fiber fun like that. Happy crafting!